He's the managing partner of Spice Venture Capital. He's the co-founder of Securities, and he's with us today. Please welcome Tal Eliashiv. Thank you. Thank you for applauding.
Okay, we'll start. Before we begin, let's get a sense of who is in the audience. So just a show of hands, anybody who heard about Bitcoin? You're either asleep or lying. Okay. Anybody who bought Bitcoin? Okay. Anybody that is part of a company related to crypto or to tokens or blockchain? Anybody who wants to? Okay. All right. I just wanted to see how we do a level set of the discussion here to the audience. Let's start with introductions here. I'm Tal Eliashiv. I'm founder and managing partner at Spice VC. It's a venture capital firm that is focused on investments in the blockchain domain, more specifically in the tokenizing ecosystem. We are really the first fund that is focused on investing in the tokenizing ecosystem. And we're also the first fund that is fully tokenized on its own. We raised our money through issuing security tokens. So we eat our own dog food in a way. I'm also a founder at Securitize. It's a technology platform for issuing security tokens. It's the first live such platform. So we've been in a strain of the blockchain world called security tokens industry from really the early stages. We were pioneering this concept when it sounded bizarre and weird to most people. Today, it's marking an industry that is growing really rapidly to a multi-trillion-dollar industry around the world. So it's not that weird anymore. And what it's really doing is it's enabling the world to take hundreds of trillions of dollars in illiquid assets and turn them, or turn the ownership in those assets to liquid and tradable. So that's who I am. And introducing the rest of the panel, Alexander Shulgin, to my right, is one of the most prominent and prolific Russian composers and musicians for many years now. He is an owner of Grupa Company Familia, which is a group of companies that deals with new media businesses, publishing and entertainment. He's also an investor and a crypto capitalist. Just the right guy for this panel. We have Jeff Pulver to my far right. Jeff is an internet entrepreneur, a VoIP entrepreneur, and now entrepreneur in the and pioneering in the security token and tokenization industry. He's vice chairman of Alchemist. And Alchemist is an industry leader specializing in token sales, blockchain projects, development, and investment. And I've known Jeff for many years now. So, to my left, we have Desmond Marshall, who is the managing director of Asia Pacific for The Floor. It's a global fintech innovations center with a bunch of blockchain-related companies as well. And he is a founder of Rouge Ventures, a VC, and an advisor in the fintech, crypto, and ICOs domain. And last but not least, Alexander Rentz, managing partner at Mobility Consulting, a group that helps corporations, startups, and investors take advantage of the digital transformation of transportation and mobility, and an early stage investor. So this is who we are. The topic of the panel is blockchain, and as you could hear from the introduction, we all come from totally different places in many respects as it relates to blockchain, and I hope that some of our perspective and outlook diversity will come up in the discussion today. So I'll start with a question that I don't want to spend too much time on, but it would be an interesting trigger to the diversity, and do a round robin of what does integrity in the context of blockchain mean to you? Jeff?
That you can once again trust, that you actually have an opportunity to bring trust back into business. When the internet was happening, the protocol that the internet runs on, which is TCP/IP, had trust empowered inside of it, and all the hacking we see in the world are people who break that trust. Being able to have immutable information means that as long as you trust how that source of information was first created, you can now actually create ecosystems where you can actually trust something. And trust in business and integrity in business is something which is disruptive to some people and some governments, but actually can change the way everything happens afterwards.
From my side, blockchain has always, or Bitcoin has always been on the negative side when people are talking about it. One of the things that we do at the floor is we work with the world's top 6 banks in the world. And when we're talking about integrity, that is the first and foremost thing that we have to think about, because we have an initiative called the Blockchain Factory. And one of the things that we do is actually we work with all these 6 banks around here, and we push the envelope in terms of technology, in terms of how we use these blockchain technologies for the future of banking or the future in the industry, in the financial industry. So when we're talking about integrity, we also believe in the team as well, look into how the team people is actually working, not taking the money away and then running off to the Bahamas. So in a way, the integrity, what Jeff has mentioned is definitely in terms of the trust between the people, but also the trust that other people or the other industry places upon us as well.
So to build on this, like the cool thing about blockchains and distributed ledger technologies is that you can establish this network-based trust, right? So peer-to-peer without any intermediaries. And I kind of approach this from a kind of a different angle. Usually people think about blockchains in the context of the financial industry. I really come from the world of Internet of Things and the future of mobility with, future connected autonomous robotic vehicles. So when you think about it, we not only need to establish trust between, people when we do financial transactions, but also between things in the Internet of Things, yeah? So how can you really establish trust between individual things, yeah? And how can you also make data immutable, right? Data is the new oil. Data is the basis for many of the future business models. So the ability to actually make data trusted and immutable is a very powerful thing that we can enable with distributed ledger technologies.
Hello, everyone. Of course, as an investor, I want to tell that this blockchain will give a lot of opportunity and say this is technical or financial and everything. But I want to say that blockchain will integrate us in one solid integrating mankind to change the world, to disrupt the all bad things, to make the huge step front to most important things to the all mankind, happiness. So blockchain will make us more integrated. Thanks.
So another perspective, and I'll talk about blockchain obviously as a general sense of distributed ledger. I come from a long history of very transactional businesses. And in those businesses, blockchain and distributed ledger as a concept solves a lot of complexity around businesses trying to guarantee integrity of business transactions, spending a lot of effort in controlling transactions as they flow and so on. And so in that regard, integrity brings one concept for me, and that's the integrity of business transactions. In a different sense, and that's what I've been doing for the last almost 2 years around security tokens and using the concept of security tokens to totally change the way we treat non-liquid investments like private equity investments, VC investments, real estate investments, and so on. What integrity means for me is a different distribution of the opportunity to participate in investments for people around the world. It allows people in India or China to invest in pieces of real estate anywhere in the world. It allows people who never were able to participate in the venture capital game to invest in venture capital because things can be broken into much smaller pieces and they can participate. These are investments that are higher risk, but also at the same time higher reward. And many people were not able to participate because of the game traditionally is played. So that's my aspect of it. So if we continue with this, I'm going to ask a more generic question about blockchain. You've all been around. How do you see blockchain impacting industry and the way we live over a time horizon? Jeff?
First, I'll just mention that I do personally believe that as of today's date, blockchain and Bitcoin are two of the most misunderstood, overhyped technologies in the history of mankind. And that there's a lot of learning that has to happen before you actually have widespread adoption by people who actually want to use it, because it's been contained and contaminated by darkness. And I don't use the word crypto because of all the darkness that has represented historically, but I have a great belief that as we look to the future, the ability to rethink the ecosystems that we built on the internet allow us to actually create things we couldn't do before. And that blockchain, if you go back to the start of the PC revolution, before PCs, I used modems. I actually was a kid with a 110 baud modem, a 300 baud modem, then we had 1200 baud and 2400 baud, all the way up. As far as speed of blockchains go, I look at Bitcoin to be at 110 baud modem. Ethereum is 300 baud. That's reality. It's not until we get to quantum computing are we actually going to have broadband blockchain. There's a lot of work, a lot of opportunity, but a lot of innovation yet to happen. Every day that I go by in this ecosystem, I started this year thinking that we're in 1996 and all these great things have happened. I've moved my time horizon back to 91, that we have defined HTTP. Websites has just started to happen, but great innovation yet to be. The PC revolution gave us spreadsheets, word processing, and databases. And while I look to blockchain being that immutable database, I do believe there will be other great vertical and horizontal creations that together will reshape the future of business. And that we're only at the very edge of something which is much greater than we even understand. And it will be blockchain that gets us there, but it's not what will be called in the future.
If I can build on that, so, when you think about the future of mobility, we really see this convergence of not only all of mobility, it's way beyond automotive, right? But also this convergence with the energy infrastructure and the telecommunications infrastructure. So you really have like this system of systems, right? So a very complex system where you have a lot of smart connected things that have to interact with each other. Yeah? So the question is now, how do you establish trust? How can you make this machine-to-machine economy ultimately work, where these Internet of Things devices actually talk to each other and ultimately even engage in transactions? Yeah? When you think about the future of energy, it's renewable. The future of mobility is electric. Yeah? So it's not far-fetched to think about how do we trade energy that is created in a renewable fashion. Yeah? How do we think about an electric car in that context, where it needs to establish trusted connectivity with a charging station, which is also a point of attack now for cyber threats. Yeah? And how can we also think about this vehicle as a energy store, right? That can actually feed energy back into the grid when we need to stabilize it. Yeah? So this is something where I see a big promise of distributed ledger technologies. Today we have been talking about the Internet of Things for many years now. Yeah? Actually, back in SAP, I started the work with the MIT Auto ID Center, where in 1999, Kevin Ashton invented the term Internet of Things, believe it or not. But today we still have an island of things, right? We have basically connected things that talk back to a cloud backend, but we really need to unleash the power of this Internet of Things and this emerging machine-to-machine economy. So I think this is building, and it's still early days, and we are like moving slowly towards this future vision.
Well, it's interesting because when we're talking about the future of blockchain, it's inevitable already that there are actual applications coming out. So this year especially, that we're actually seeing a lot more real-life applications coming out, because previously for the past few years, people have just been addicted to ICOs and everything.
I mean, we're seeing applications, but in the dial-up internet there are applications, but when we had slow speed apps, things are optimized for the infrastructure we have. There always are apps. The apps drives innovation, that creates the opportunity. We're going to have many apps happen, but not too many people were successful using Flight Simulator on a 300 baud modem. And I would not recommend trying to fly a plane on Ethereum. And it's going to take a little bit of time. And we have
it's going to take a little
response.
bit of time, because most people will be thinking about, hey, I have a bigger dream because I want to dominate the world with blockchain. It doesn't happen like that, because especially when we're talking about the consumer market, we're pretty much advanced in Asia or around there. It doesn't really happen just by the snap of hands around here, because consumer loyalty is pretty low. So people start switching to different things as long as it's much more better. But you're actually seeing a lot more actual real applications coming along here. So I don't care whether they are smaller apps coming out or from the bigger banks, they're already rolling out as well, like some of the bigger names outside. So it goes back into integrity as well, because of course there will be people who will be just taking the money and running off with it and not actually doing anything. So as an investor ourselves, or as a blockchain factory initiative that we have, we're pushing it forward. We're actually looking at the people to actually push them to the envelope and say, okay, you have to move your ass and actually work things out, because we are actually molding the future. So in a way, when we talk about the integrity, there's a future for everything as long as there's adoption. And before the adoption, it requires people to actually roll things out in a much more reality phase mode coming out, and not just say, hey, I want to go to the moon by tomorrow. It doesn't happen like that.
So to me, when I look at this, I look at the internet revolution. Is the internet revolution over? It's not over yet, right? It's still progressing. The question is, where are the points of impact that we see along the way? I think that the answer around blockchain is the same way. There are certain applications where, on one hand, the pool is so strong and technology is there to start creating an impact in the very short term. In our domain, in the domain of security tokens, we see an industry being built, huge industry being built in front of our eyes already, and already has a significant volume around it, because the pool is very strong and because the capabilities are there. Obviously, a year or two from now, capabilities are going to be much more significant, and the ecosystem is going to be much more efficient, and we'll see much more acceleration in the growth of business. But we already see it, and we see the impact. There are going to be other places, like when you think about the places where the core blockchain technology makes a transactional difference in industry like telco or shipping or finance. It's the industries where the pool is very strong, but also adoption is very slow because it involves very complex systems that are already integrated, already connected, and you somehow have to take concepts that are totally different, although maybe make a significant transitional change, but still very complex to integrate and change.
I mean, I guess the fundamental problem I have is that we now have 3 billion people on the internet, but most people don't know what TCP/IP is. To me, when you talk about blockchain, you're talking about TCP/IP of the future. And we have to disintermediate a term from the usage. Blockchain is able to happen because the internet happened. You know, when I was doing work with Voice over IP back in '95, there were 16 million people on the internet. And at the time, I thought VoIP was the most overhyped, misunderstood technology in the history of mankind. Now you have 3 billion people on the internet, so the hype cycle is so much greater, so much wider. And we're able to lay upon new technologies where, yes, the internet, hopefully one day in this world, we're still alive, can connect all 7 or 8 billion people on this planet. Right now, we're halfway there almost. The ability for us to create applications, apply vision, and do things will be beyond what we see. I mean, personally at Alchemist, we look at the future of programmable securities to represent a $4 quadrillion opportunity. That's rather large. We believe that over time, businesses, when they come into the future, will be able to create financial instruments that help optimize their businesses and make them investable, make them very, very proper and very interesting security investment opportunities to invest not only in a company, but to empower a company's ecosystem to support them. That's all because we can create programmable securities which happen to clear on the blockchain. It's not dependent upon a certain company to use blockchain. And so the value is there, the opportunity is there, but it's going to be beyond blockchain. We're going to have to separate certain terms and some core values and create things that other people, consumers can relate to, which is going to be the future.
I'll switch a little bit and ask a specific question to Alexander here. You wrote quite a bit about centralization and decentralization of nations, of businesses. You talked about business nations and so on. How does blockchain relate to this?
Before this, I just want to say the short things. I jumped in this business before Satoshi found this blockchain, Bitcoin. There is only one blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain. All others decentralized ledger, and it was file sharing, peer-to-peer. So when I jumped to the company and I tried to promote this company and ask to invest in this company, nobody believed. Who knows now the company called BitFury? We see some hands. It's a multi-billion company, and they're like Microsoft and software. So and 40 plus company in my portfolio. I hope the half of them you will know later. But it's difficult to talk about the future. 3 years ago, in DLD, I come to the few very important and respectable investors and say, please invest in the Bitcoin. Bitcoin at that time was $190. Nobody believed. I sent emails, sent deck, and I received the answers like our analytics don't believe in this. Our analytics don't trust in this. So I don't trust in VC anymore because of this analytics. But I trust in the future. And as I wrote that the global decentralization will bring, instead of 220 countries, bring 7 digital unions. It will be British Commonwealth. It will be Euro-Asian Union. It will be Chinese. It already have. It will be ASEAN countries. Islamic, Latam. So it's a 7 digital unions, so digital states with the same regulatory or the same TCP and everything. But it's also changed not only geopolitical situation, it's changed dramatically the business. And in any way change business, but not because blockchain exists on the on the internet now, or TCP. We just have 3 days ago I held conference about the space with our Guatemalan partners who's sitting here, and we spoke about the new decentralized network on the space between. It will be next generation of let's say network, not internet, but next generation of this, and it will be so much interesting, and it's possible because of blockchain, because of decentralized technology. So this will change all our life. It's disrupt the existing business to the best way. Like the previous industrial revolution, they change our life. From the previous industrial revolution, we start to have 5 days per week, 8 hours per day working to work, and the rest for the life. But so this revolution will change dramatically, and work will be for robots and life will be for people. And how we will live this life, because if we don't stop our creation, but creation is not work, creation is a basic of mankind. So that's we will have to spend our life not to survive, but to create something. This is thanks to blockchain or decentralized technology. It will bring big step closer to this target.
I'll adopt that. Work is for robots and life is for people. Yeah, that would be great. Desmond, can you maybe talk a little bit about what's happening in this arena in Asia?
Sure. A lot of people might be very interested in what's happening in Asia, especially in China. In terms of blockchain over there, when you're looking into China, a lot of people will be looking into how the businesses works in the first place. So they follow what the state talks to you about. So how President Xi Jinping says. So when President Xi Jinping says, hey, blockchain is the future, which he did, pretty much practically all of the businesses or anything from the newspaper stand to the normal big businesses, they will want to slap the word blockchain onto their companies, because if you do that in the first place, I don't care whether you actually do the applications or have anything related to blockchain or not, you will find very good funding or investors coming in. But of course, that's always a very beginning around here. What's happening right now in China is specifically, in terms of the tokens or the ICOs, of course, those are totally banned already, so don't even think about that. But in terms of the blockchain applications, practically everyone from the government to private sector is thinking about how to actually implement them. Now, the situation in China is a little bit funny, because when you ask pretty much practically a lot of people in China, they don't really know what blockchain is. And all they think about is, hey, is blockchain Bitcoin? Okay, that's good, because I want to buy some, but I couldn't buy it in China. I need to ship my money out and do something outside. Now, that is something good and something bad, because it's good that it gets the common people, the normal people on the street to understand, hey, there's something called Bitcoin. But in another way, even for the so-called business people, they have no idea in terms of, okay, how do we actually apply blockchain into real applications, into a, say for example, property, into financial industry, or into anything manufacturing, for example. So in a way, there's still, but the thing is, there's a hype over them. They want it. It's just that they still lack the actual implementation in terms of how it is. Now, for many other companies, because of the previous speculation of what Bitcoin is, a lot of the people or the local companies, they are actually running outside and say, hey, say for example, you're the big boss of a certain company, and you have no idea what blockchain is, and they say, hey, I want to apply blockchain into my company. How should I do so? So they just ask all these young kids coming along, hey, you just started a company, can you help me do something in terms of blockchain? Can we establish something? Of course, when you're a boss and you're saying, hey, I'm going to throw you $10 million, can you help me work on blockchain? Of course, the kids will be saying, yes, I can definitely do so. But most of these cases, they end up going bust. They couldn't actually deliver anything. So in a way, all these business people, they are actually waking up because there's a lot of these so-called scammers outside, the real-time scammers outside, and saying, hey, I can do this, I can do that, but at the end of the day, they can't do anything because number one, they don't have the technology, and number two, they just say, hey, isn't blockchain just Bitcoin? So there should be more, right? So in a way, when we're talking to China or when we're talking to Asia, a lot of people are now looking into something much more concrete in terms of, hey, do you have any case studies? Can you actually do certain things? When we're in China, the mentality is very different. They're not just producing mobile apps. They are actually thinking something bigger. So things like, hey, can we have a blockchain that encompasses all of the small and medium businesses, not just in China, but all the countries along one belt, one road. So those are a lot of companies. I'm a manufacturing company. I'm a manufacturing company of LED screens. How can I work on a blockchain solution that connects to external buyers and external financial industries like banks outside to do financing? Can we actually, number three is, especially when the state is actually saying this, is President Xi actually said it and say he wants to revive old and dying industries like building ships. So if you're a ship manufacturer, how can you revive a long and aging and dying industry in terms of that? And one of the things that we say is, hey, if you're building a blockchain around this shipping industry, connecting with the financial industry, connecting with suppliers around here, where you can get smaller verification, quicker funding, quicker release of funds from the custodians, and of course, if it works along the way, then it becomes a global standard or a national standard. And from that national standard, you can actually say, hey, I'm the biggest shipping company, I'm building a global standard, you're a dying shipping industry, join me. So I'm saving you, but actually I'm actually recruiting you into my chain. So that's what's happening overall in what's happening in Asia. So it's quite fun, it's quite massive as well, because the only problem is everyone's still talking, and how do we actually get things rolling by stages? That's pretty much a real technique and skill coming along.
Thank you. Totally different question, but I can't do this job without asking that question. If we started with integrity, one of the things we saw starting last year is use of blockchain and token technology to raise funds. We've seen the flurry of ICOs that came throughout 2017 and to a lesser degree, but still through 2018. This and integrity, and do you think it makes a big impact long term on blockchain and this and its growth?
In some ways, they're diametrically apart. My friend Steven Nureyev invented the ICO when he created for Ethereum, when he architected the ICO for Ethereum, which was 5 times larger crowdfunding than anything before that. And the architecture for that ICO had been copy-pasted thousands of times and unfortunately abused by many, which created, because the whole idea when Ethereum was happening is had one goal as a team is they didn't want to go to jail. They didn't want to go to jail. That was basically the underlying theme, that we're going to go out, we go to the crowd, and we don't want to go to jail. And so they were able to get they were the first project ever to get a most likely than not letter. What did that mean? That means that they were most likely than not a security. And they went with that letter to Switzerland, and Crypto Valley happened because of that letter. They took that letter to Singapore, and Singapore changed the law. This is just a letter, an opinion. When you learn about securities law, what was frightening to me, and perhaps frightening to you, at least in America, what murder and SEC discovery of fraud have in common is that there's no statute of limitations. So if you're going to be playing in this game and trying to skirt the law, you may get blindsided. So there are a lot of people, for many reasons, who are dishonest, disloyal. They just looked at this opportunity to put up a project with no intention ever of delivering on it, and there's been a lot of abuses of that, which is why I've been focusing specifically inside the law looking at how understanding the legal construct, what is a security, what does it mean, what do these rules mean, what is Reg A, what is Reg D, and what are the other rules around this, and how do you actually create things that are legal in the US, understand how other countries operate, so that we don't by accident do things, because the SEC, when I was playing with communication policy, I didn't really worry about going to jail. But the Securities and Exchange Commission has a unique ability to look at your project 7 years from now, a project that you thought was a utility, and say, no, sorry, you actually were a security. And when they now have the ability to unwind with rescission that deal, and you actually be forced to give back that money at today's valuation. And so that kind of hurts. And that you're going to be advising companies and structuring companies in this space, you have to be aware of the impact of the opportunities. And so several months ago, I created a trade association for the blockchain space, which today is the Blockchain Token Association. I started out being the Securities Token Association, but I realized that many of my friends who had projects felt like they were going to be somehow, put aside because they didn't want to be stigmatized that we're a Security Token Association. So in America, we have gender-neutral bathrooms. I figured I should create a gender-neutral token association. So the Blockchain Token Association is a rainbow coalition. You know, we don't shed or care about the nature of the utility or what the nature of the security token or tokens, how they come out. And so in America right now, the SEC, CFTC, and other organizations are trying to understand under what scrutiny, under what rules will certain things be regulated. Once that's affirmed, there'll be many other countries that look to that as far as what they should do. Not everybody, but many will. And then you could create projects and understand the scrutiny to follow and what to do. And that will change many, many things. And so, to the extent there is no integrity, we don't have a business, right? And so integrity gives us an opportunity to trust. It also gives us a chance to actually defraud. And so blockchain itself is wonderful. It gives us great database opportunities to do great things. But fundamentally, if people were using this as a platform for scams, there's a reason why the Department of Justice and the SEC and many other organizations go through things. And from our perspective, I look for companies who want to be on the up and up to agree to several things. Anti-money laundering, and know your customer when you're actually doing something, to have transparency, to freely and openly share quarterly audited financials and bank statements. And most importantly, don't come out into a crowd of these people and say, hey, no, it's, we're here in Tel Aviv. I can't tell you to open up your wallets right now and buy the Jeff coin because there's news coming out which is going to happen. Can't do that. No front running, no insider trading. So there's integrity, and we don't have any rules right now. So until we understand what it's like from a financial status perspective, from a regulatory perspective, what the burden's going to be for quasi-public, we're not going to know. So it's a big thing, and I think that when we have these things in place, people and companies will understand how to do compliance, and once you have compliance, everything opens up.
Thank you. We have about 5 minutes. I'll open it to questions from the audience to the panel. Questions?
So there's a question over there.
Ralph has a question.
Rafael.
Can somebody pass?
This is a question for Alexander and Jeff. In terms of blockchain, people are talking about using blockchain for buying property transactions, for intellectual property registration. Can you give an idea of which other areas in business and in commerce would effectively will benefit from having some kind of blockchain structure or blockchain foundation?
Everyone, really. We were talking about this at the beginning part, that the tokenization, the opportunity to take an asset, tokenize it, and hopefully create a marketplace where it could freely trade, offers the opportunity. So I've invested in maybe 400 plus companies in my life. When I was an investor, I had to wait for an exit, either positive or negative, to get out. The opportunity to invest in a token in any company, any industry where there's a token, hopefully there'll be a marketplace for that token, and you don't have to wait 7 years, 5 years, 11 years to have an exit. You can find somebody to come in. The benefits of having tokenized venture funds is that you actually have the ability to be a limited partner and get out if you'd like to. And so it changes how we think and how we approach things. And There'll be some industries where it makes much more sense right now, but I do think overall the positive disruption of tokenization of assets will create great opportunities for both the investors, the investees, and give birth to new vertical industries around us.
Ralph, thank you for the question. I just want to add about the registry of the ledger of the property. Our company work with 7 governments already, did all this land ledger and property ledger. Why? Because it's one big step to disrupt the government. I strongly believe in 2035 it will be no government. We will be government. And it's, if you just put on the ledger the government, land and real estate, it's big step to this target. You can smile, you can jump, but let's talk about this in 2035. What it will be, for me, more exciting blockchain.
When is this?
2035. What is the same one I tried to offer Bitcoin for $90, $190 3 years ago. I think it's the most exciting Bitcoin blockchain or decentralized technology will be for the decentralized energy, because energy will became the equal, like a gold was equal to some money, and if it's tokenization of everything will be like a medium to come to the global kibbutz. So the decentralized technology will be, decentralized energy will be big part of this. So I'm excited about decentralized energy, and blockchain technology will help to make decentralized energy for the global usage for mankind.
Let me add on to this. For that gentleman over there, what industries will be more suitable? I can tell you that all industries are suitable as long as there are people using it. So that's the key thing. If no one's using it, it's nothing. So basically, you can build up anything. You can build a rocket space or a rocket spaceship or whatever. As long as there's someone using it, then it's got value. And it's not just using it for one time. You have to keep it consistently and also frequently to keep that traffic going along. So
One thing I forgot was earlier this year I met with a group that actually is looking to use tokens to enable commerce in low Earth LEO space, literally low Earth orbiting space. Friends of mine believe they're building the next generation space station. They're planning on financing it with traditional capital and with blockchain, with token offerings. And they're actually looking to create a space economy, literally.
So it's good because we don't have a government by 2035. We have to move up to the space.
So I'll just add to this to summarize that the prime industries to see the most value right away are all transactional businesses, whether it's finance industry, shipping, logistics, all these types of industry, and industries that have a lot of confidential, meaningful data moving around, like healthcare industry and so on. And then there is another one that I talked about at the beginning and in the middle, and Jeff talked about too, and that's the new type of securities, digital securities that we create with security tokens. It's a new branch of financial investing, and we'll see there significant growth and adoption, probably faster than all the previous ones I mentioned. We're out of time, so thank you.
Thank you very much.